Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. It is so amazing to have y'all with us. Brothers and sisters, today we have a crisis on our hands. That's right, another California crisis, and I want to be the evangelical voice of reason to the state of California and all the voters of California. The subject today is Proposition 15, the stupidest stupid thing stupid people could ever want to do. It's mind-boggling that right now the state of California wants to broaden the tax base on exactly the companies that California needs most right now. So before we get into why Proposition 15 is so stupid, and we'll talk about what Proposition 15 does. To put it kind of into a summary, it basically raises property taxes on companies, right? On commercial properties. And we'll talk about why that's a bad idea. We'll do that by getting a feel for what the reality on the ground in California is right now. And we'll go over some of the counter arguments that I've heard from folks that just really don't make much sense. It's really kind of simple. And we can even if you don't want to hear the arguments I'm about to make, the one argument that I think absolutely should get traction with everyone is for those of you who are fans of Prop 13, which limited the amount of property taxes that could be levied on California homeowners. This is the first step in a broader set of steps that will chip away at what Proposition 13 has done for California residents. Don't assume, because it never does, it never has in the past, right? As soon as any government entity decides we're going to do this that reduces the influence of a thing, a law, something we've done in the past, you can count on that simply being the very first step in more steps to reduce the influence of that thing. And the reason you know that's true is because the one area where it is always true is if it has to do with money. Always follow the money. The state of California is extremely hard up for money. We have ridiculously huge deficits. We have to make huge cuts. And if there's one thing the state of California is really bad at, it's making cuts. The folks in Sacramento are excellent at spending money, frequently spending it on things that the rest of us might consider to be kind of stupid. So their solution to the problem is never, let's take a close look at ourselves and evaluate whether or not our spending makes sense or our ability to lead is up to the task. It's always, if only we had more, which tends to be the national trend, right? These are folks who believe that all of their involvement is positive involvement. They don't believe that there's a scenario where the world isn't better by them being involved. These are the kind of folks that if you amplify it from a small example, think of folks that are in your homeowners association. Or if you're a younger person, think back to the folks, even some folks maybe that were in your student government, right? Maybe high school government. There are always folks who are firmly convinced that anything with their involvement is made better by their involvement. I also like to think of these people as the if only people. If only everyone did things the way I wanted them to, right? So those are the folks that we see in charge. Sadly, we have a lot of very lower qualified, not horribly qualified folks that are making very big decisions that affect all Californians. And the idea that we want to increase the tax burden on commercial properties is not only a poorly considered decision today, it is an indicator that those of us who are benefiting from Proposition 13 right now, which is everybody who owns a home, everyone who's bought a home, that's all of us, we are next. And it'll be incremental, right? Perhaps it'll be Prop 13 gets pulled back for homes over a certain price point, right? Because it's always about the evil rich folks who could afford a more expensive home. There's no question in my mind, given what we've heard from Sacramento in terms of what they want to continue to spend on, And those of you can Google that. But I want to sort of calibrate you to where we are right now with businesses. Now, a lot of people are complaining that what was one article I had read was, or a quote from some political person was, companies shouldn't be enjoying the same benefits from Proposition 13 that grandma and grandpa do. And I'd ask, why not? So the bottom line is grandma and grandpa probably don't have hundreds to thousands of employees. And this is never a zero-sum equation. I never quite get this political argument that you can raise the cost of a thing for a business and then not expect a response that is going to be everything from we fire people to we simply sell off our holdings in California or rent them out or whatever and relocate, right? So that's where I want to come down first and sort of lay the groundwork here. Now, in past shows, for those of you who've been listening for a long time, you know that we've talked about public opinion relating to staying in California. It's not a good number. For the last 10 years, 15 years, the number of people who actively want to leave the state of California is now over 50%. I haven't seen any numbers since the lockdown, since we've had the coronavirus thing happen. But given the realities of what companies are willing to facilitate now in terms of working remotely or working from home, it would not surprise me at all if that number has now gotten much higher. We're already seeing, there was an interesting article that came out the other day about folks relocating to Tahoe from California who want to sort of get out of this area. Very high interest in the Nevada side of the border for Lake Tahoe. So, there's already an elevated interest in out of urban areas, but also out of California, not urban areas. So that's already a thing. And the influence of the lockdown and it educating companies that folks working remotely can actually work really well for them, I think is a key factor in this particular thing. Because, well, what happens, right, when this occurs? If you're going to get your costs of holding real estate increased, you're either going to reduce your holdings, right? Maybe the smart companies that own real estate will sell it, or maybe they just simply raise the costs. That's how it happens. The owners of these properties, because there's two scenarios, right? There's the scenario where a company owns its property, and then there's a scenario where the company leases its property. Both of those potential companies are going to be negatively affected. So while they're saying it's not going to impact smaller companies, right? There's several criteria that they use to define a bigger company so that we're not hitting mom and pop, we're just hitting the big evil corporations, right? Well, many big evil corporations, many mom and pop organizations, in fact, most don't own their land, their building, their commercial property. They rent it. Anyone who thinks that their rent isn't going to dramatically increase because of a property assessment increase is out of their minds and doesn't understand how the real world works. It's not a zero-sum equation. When a number goes up over here, as a responsible company owner who's managing costs, you have to make adjustments elsewhere to accommodate that change in cost, right? That could be reducing the square footage that you're occupying. It could be going to a smaller commercial space, or finding another spot where you will have to pay less, which likely won't happen because everyone will be adjusting their leasing rates based on this new reality. So the idea that this isn't going to impact small businesses is absolutely myopic and clearly put out there by someone who hasn't even taken a moment to think about how the real world works. Maybe the Disneys of the world who own all of the land that the park sits on are folks that will be affected. And I suppose that, I see where in someone's mind that may make sense. But if you think that's it, you're nuts. Granted, we're talking about a fun thing, but the amount it will cost you to go to Disneyland will go up. Companies just don't decide to take it in the bottom line when these sorts of things happen. There are always unintended but clearly predictable outcomes when you raise the costs of a business. For instance, let's take it to real world examples. Now, I'm a real estate broker in Morgan Hill, California, and there was a time when I rented office space. When I had there was a time way back, early, right after I got my license, right after I got my broker's license, and I started my own office. I got a physical location. I had a couple of offices. I had a conference room, and I found that no one ever used it. I never used it. I was paying for equipment to be in there for folks to use when they came into the office. I was paying rent on the space, and I found that nobody used it. So ultimately, I came to the conclusion that it was an unneeded expense for my business. That's a decision based on market influences, right? And I made that, and I saved my company some money, and I continued to be able. It didn't have any negative impact on my ability to win clients or to continue with my business. So for a year and a half, 2 years, I had an office, and then I never had one again, and it really never had an impact on my ability to do business. So there's always decision making. Here on this show, we've talked about just you as an individual should at least once a year do a retrospective on your finances. What are things you're spending money on that maybe you shouldn't be spending money on? Are you making headway on your goals in terms of saving for the next investment, or maybe just for your family for that next vacation? Those exact same mindsets apply all the way up the chain, whether we're talking about a home financial decision or a small company financial decision or a Fortune 500 financial decision. These are things that happen all the time. So the idea that you'd increase the expense without there being a coinciding decrease in some other expenditure on the part of that company is just idiotic. So you don't get to say, because a lot of these commercial properties aren't owned by the companies that are in them. You'd be surprised how many really big companies don't own their buildings. Now, Apple Computer is an interesting example where of course, they have purchased land and they have built the donut headquarters, right, that everyone has heard about. But there are other buildings that they have occupied that they don't own, that are owned by other companies, and they lease them. So granted, Apple falls into that category of I'm sure most people don't think of it as evil because Apple gets so much love. But what other company? What's another evil company out there that employs an awful lot of people that would likely decrease their personnel footprint if they were faced with increased taxes? And they're looking at getting billions and billions of dollars from this increase in taxes. Now, of course, while these folks that do leasing, that own property and lease commercial property out to other companies, all those buildings that you see that have tons of signs for different businesses, whether it's the dentist or a snack shop or a sandwich shop or an accountant, and all of these various things, those folks will all be affected because their rents will go up, their leases will be increased, because the owners of those commercial spaces will have no other way to recover the amount that they're now losing in additional tax burden, right? All right, so I know I wanted to start this off by kind of establishing the lay of the land, and I kind of came at it backwards. But the first thing I wanted to really lay out there is already an upswell of just folks in the state that want out. Now, why do we care about that for this argument? One of the reasons why so many companies have stayed in California is because they were afraid of brain drain. Now, this was something that came up in the early 90s where companies that were looking at moving out of the state thought more deeply about it or were more concerned about it because there was a relatively small amount of people who wanted to leave California. Back in those days, the number of folks interested in leaving California was probably 10%, but that number is now not that number anymore. We're now up over 50%. But the idea of losing 90% of your big contributors to your company is a scary number for a lot of businesses. Losing 50%, far less scary. And I think that the bill that can be sold, given the realities today, companies can make an offer to their current employees and say, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to relocate to Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, South Dakota, wherever. We're not going to reduce your pay. We're going to pay you the exact same amount of money we're paying you now. And when you get there, there's no state income tax in some of these states, right? Cost of living is dramatically lower. The cost to buy a home is less than half what it costs here. So you're going to be able to bank a ton more money, and while at the same time, the company is going to be able to be more profitable because the commercial space we're going to occupy is going to be less. The taxes we pay will be less. And overall, we'll be saving money as a company and you'll be saving money as employees. Now, who isn't going to at least stop and pause at that suggestion? I know I would. Absolutely. So this idea that you can do this and base it off of the numbers you're seeing right now. Oh, this is what I love about so many of these projections that come from state organizations. What they're projecting is that that nothing will change. All these companies that are doing a certain amount of business in California won't leave California. They'll stay here. They'll continue to invest in employees here in California. And then all we'll do is flip this tax switch and suddenly we'll make more money. And that's not the way it's going to work. This will absolutely be the last straw for an awful lot of companies that are just already frustrated with having to do business in California. And I think we'll see an awful lot of companies decide, you know what, it is worth it to us. Maybe we can let some people who don't want to move, we'll let them work remotely, but we as a corporation, we're out. And that's the other side of the equation. The concerns over brain drain, I think, are also reduced because they don't need to lose those people. They can say to you, all right, you can stay here. Maybe this wouldn't apply for all employees, but we'll let you stay here and we'll let you work remotely from California. Now, unfortunately for you, you'll have to continue to pay California income tax and all those other types of things, but feel free. You can hold the same position you hold at the company, but the headquarters will be in Austin or in Phoenix or in Boise or, somewhere in South Dakota. So I really think that there is already a whole bunch of very big companies that are right on the verge of taking that plunge and moving out of the state of California. And something like this is going to do two things. It's going to be a singular event that is an absolutely huge influencer on making that decision. But I think it will also have a secondary effect of establishing what California is willing to do to businesses in order to supplement the state's inability to responsibly manage tax funds or spend money, or to responsibly collect the money, frankly. So I think that's interesting. I think that is something that can absolutely play into this. And an argument that I get frequently from folks who don't agree with me on this one is, well, who cares if we lose companies? We have new companies that crop up in California every day, right? Far more companies get started than leave California in a given year. That may be true. But how quickly do companies fail? What we're talking about is trading an existing company that potentially has, because remember, we're targeting big companies. So these are going to be companies that make not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that get taxed, but millions of dollars a year that get taxed, because that's the definition, right? I think it has to be more than $3 million in gross income a year in order to be considered a company that will be hit by this. That's an awful lot of companies. And those are the companies you're going to lose, right? Of course, we're also going to lose the mom and pops because their leases are going to go up, or at least the mom and pops will be negatively affected because their lease costs will go up, their property costs will go up, whether they own or not. But the reality is that what we're trading is these established companies that are occupying large commercial spaces that employ a lot of people, and we're losing not only the corporate taxes relating to that company, we're losing the vast majority of the income tax that's associated with all the people that they employ. And we're trading that for a company that's just been started, maybe has one person, two people, three people working in that company that may be working out of someone's garage, where that company has over an 80% chance of failing. And somehow we think that's an equitable trade. At least that's one of the arguments I've heard. So from that perspective, it's absolutely idiotic for this to come now. And let's also understand the circumstances we exist in right now. We are in a COVID lockdown scenario. How many companies are successfully starting now? And are there as many companies being started up as there are failing every week because they are unable to do business under the circumstances that California has put its citizens under? I'm guessing this is not when a lot of people are starting companies. I'm guessing that folks who were thinking about starting companies in 2020 have stepped away from that and are waiting until this stuff works itself out before they go to the trouble of trying to open a company. And I know there's plenty of companies that have failed that opened their doors just before this started and are now failed companies. We're losing companies left and right. This is not the time to make it more expensive to do business in California. This is the time to make it less expensive to do business in California. And if you don't believe that, I'd love to hear your opinion of why that is, because it doesn't make any sense. Okay, now another topic I wanted to hit here is the folks who want to leave. So this is an article that comes from the Los Angeles Times. Just over half of California, and this is from September of 2019. So I would wager that these numbers have gotten far worse since September of 2019. Just over half of California's registered voters have considered leaving the state, with soaring housing costs cited as the most common reason for wanting to move, according to a new poll. If you're a business owner, at some point it becomes a math problem, not a political problem. And if you are seeing a state that's going to charge you, 15% on all income you earn, that's going to make you pay higher property taxes on any commercial property you own, and if you don't own it because you lease property from someone who will have to pay that tax, you have to pay more. In addition to all the other annoying things that California levies on business owners, that makes it a much more easy decision to say, you know what, we're going to go to the pain and suffering of having to move our corporation headquarters to another state because the math just doesn't work anymore. Now, in terms of just outward migration, California's outbound migration continues with some in-state diversions. Let's see, this came June of 2020, so this is a very recent article on this. And some of the other things that are playing into this, which are kind of interesting, is the perception of Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots breaking out in California. City dwellers are longing for safer neighborhoods and safer towns, and these folks are wanting to get out. For many Californians, the final straw came sooner, as more than 691,000 Californians left the state in 2018, and I have no doubt in my mind that only increasing numbers of people have left since then. If that's the number for 2018, I would love to see the number for 2019 and what we've gotten so far in 2020. Texas nabbed 86,000 former Californians, according to the Orange County Register. Census Bureau migration data for 2018 shows in raw terms of people moving, the top spot for Californians is Texas. Next came Arizona, then Washington, then Nevada, and then Oregon. All told, California had the most exits among the state, and that wave grew by 4% in a year. So from 2017 to 2018, there was a 4% increase in the number of people leaving. Nothing has happened in California since 2018 that I think would slow that, and I believe that if anything, it's at least that. It's at least a 4% increase from 2018 to 2019, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's 5% or higher. They go on to talk to a few folks about some of the reasons. California's 13.3% income tax rate is the highest marginal tax rate in the nation. We know why California companies leave for other states. Chief Executive Magazine reports year after year that when CEOs across the country are surveyed, they name California as the worst state in the country in which to have to do business. California has the highest in the nation taxes, one of the highest business tax climates, with the Tax Foundation ranking California at number 49, the second worst in the nation, ahead only of New Jersey. So that's the lay of the land. That is where we are now. This is before any talk about increasing the costs relating to doing business in California by increasing the tax on commercial real estate. Even if you disagree with me, even if you don't think that what I've described here carries a lot of weight, and that it would be more fair for commercial properties to be taxed at a higher tax rate, I think that you have to at least agree that the timing is the worst it could possibly be. I cannot imagine a worse time. We have a scenario where the state is mandating an environment where businesses cannot prosper, and adding to that an additional financial burden that will only cause those businesses to either relocate or close. So where is the logic there? So I hope that gives you some insights into this. It is absolutely the dumbest of dumb things. I don't see how it makes sense in any way. And with the COVID lockdown scenario, again, pushing this work from home ethic that companies are embracing, I think that this, one of the top decisions that folks will make if Proposition 15 passes isn't what do we cut to cover these costs? It's where do we move to? And then they won't get what they want out of this at all. They will lose the tax dollars relating to all of these companies that move out. Any companies that are created are likely going to fail. If you're a betting person, betting on a company failing is a pretty good bet with about 80% accuracy. So according to this, California's small business failure rate is 69% higher than the national average, the worst of all states. According to Fundera, 20% of small businesses fail in their first year, 30% of small businesses fail in their second year, and 50% of small businesses fail after 5 years in business. Finally, 70% of small business owners fail in their 10th year in business. So there is a huge failure rate with businesses. It just depends on what length of time you're talking about. That 80% mark looks like it gets hit. So for a failing business, within that 5-year mark, there's typically an 80% chance of that business failing. And what we want to do is trade established companies that are already huge performers with these likely to fail companies. Doesn't make sense. It's not good for California. It's not good for Californians, and it's not good for California business. And I swear the idea that this is coming up now, where the government has decided that they are so essential that in order for people to benefit the most, the government needs the money before businesses are taken into account, is shocking. So I hope that has helped you get some insights into this. If you're a voter in California, I would strongly encourage you to vote no on Proposition 15. Even if you agree with it in a general sense, I think you need to disagree with it now, because it is quite possibly the absolute worst thing you could possibly do right now for the state of California. All right, folks, I hope that analysis has been helpful. The goal, as always, is to leave you with more information and knowledge on the table than I take up in your time. Hope we've achieved that. Have a great day, and I'll talk to y'all next time.